Great. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the morning session. This is another webinar in the We Connect International and Procter & Gamble series of webinars. We're doing 10 in all in this session with the experts from P&G South Africa. Yesterday, we had one of the experts from Nigeria, so it was actually amazing and great to pick up on the continent. And I know a lot of our listeners are also beyond South Africa. Today, we go into the subject of finance. We're all often terrified of finance, but it's something we need to know to be able to run our businesses effectively and understand the figures. And I'm one of those who really needs to push myself to do the finances each month. So I'm going to hand over to Mikhail. He'll go through the housekeeping. And thank you so much for joining. And everybody's on mute so far. So over to you, Mikhail.
Great, thanks, Jean. Hi, everyone. I'm Mikhail. I'm the Media Purchasing Manager at P&G, and I also manage BEE from a supply and enterprise development and preferential procurement perspective. Just a quick reminder that if you could please stay on mute, that would be great, as it would eliminate a lot of the background noise. And also, if you have any questions, can you please send them through in the chat, and we'll stop for them, I think, twice during this presentation. So with that, I'll hand over to Stan, who's our Finance Director at P&G South Africa, to take us through access to capital for SMEs.
All right, thank you, Mikhail. Good morning, everybody. I hope everybody keeps safe and warm. I don't know about warm, but trying to get there. Anyway, so it's my third already interaction with the We Connect. I've met already some of you in the last few weeks, but just for everybody, anybody who I haven't met yet, brief introduction. My name is Stanislav. I'm currently leading the finance team in P&G South Africa. I was born and grew up in Russia. I grew up in the small village in eastern Russia. And then I finished my my bachelor's in Russia, and then after that I've decided to explore a little bit the world. And then I moved to Australia to learn English. Went there to learn English and basically never left. Finished my master's in Australia, and then I joined P&G after my master's in 2004. So I've been with P&G for almost 16 years now. Always was in finance. Did few years in Australia, in the country, across various roles within the country. You know, commercial finance, corporate finance, plant finance. And then I also had a privilege to go into the region, into Asia regional headquarters in Singapore, where basically I again did multiple roles for with the regional and global scope. So I did the corporate finance. I did the sort of global role on the creating the new business units for the global duty-free operations, and then I did the regional treasury role, and that's made me super passionate about the cash, and that's why you will see me talking a lot about the cash today. And then about a year ago, I was offered the wonderful opportunity to basically head the finance team in South Africa, and here I am. So I landed in about September last year. So yeah, half of the time in South Africa I spent in a lockdown, as many of you. So for the last 3.5 months, basically, was sitting in this home office. On the personal side, I'm married. I've got 2 kids. I love reading. I love traveling. Well, when it was allowed, movies, gaming. So basically, trying to enjoy the life outside P&G as well. Okay. So that's me, and what we will talk today is basically access to cash. I actually deliberately changed the the topic. It's not the access to the capital, it's access to cash. And as I will be talking in the next slides, in a lot of the cases, the financing, well, I mean, need for the financing is arising from issues or insufficiencies on the cash. So we will talk about, why cash is important, and then what are the avenues of, how to fund the cash insufficiencies. Okay, why cash? People are saying that profit is an opinion and cash is basically the fact. Profit is just the number on the P&L, which is driven by a lot of the standards, a lot of the additions and subtractions, but it doesn't necessarily convert into the cash into your bank account. There are a lot of evidence that company can go a long time without the being profitable, but company quickly going into the bankruptcy if there is no cash, if you cannot pay to your people, if you cannot pay to your suppliers. If we look from the what is cash and how the how do you look at the cash? So it's always start, yes, with your profit. And end of the day, that's the starting point. That's what the business generating. But then it's not necessarily the cash. The first adjustment, which is very common and which probably describes or defines on why business can be unprofitable, but still generating, cash. It's all the adding back all the non-cash items. And at the end of the day, if you bought the warehouse, if you build the plant, this is the cash you paid some time ago. You depreciate it over the year. It's appearing as the expense on your P&L. It reduces your overall profit, but there is no physical cash movement. So that depreciation is adding back to define your gross cash flow. And then there are changes in the working capital and other cash operations. And this is where, the nitty-gritty sort of details or the impact on your cash in the bank. And this, the working capital is basically your inventory. It's your accounts payable, how quickly you collect the money, so receivables, and how long does it take for you to pay to your expenses. And the other cash is usually, around the M&A activities, around the prepaid expenses, around the deferred taxes, and so on and so forth. Basically, it's something which you paid for, but it's not necessarily reflected on your P&L. The expense might not be still recognized because the actual expense will happen in the future. And that determines your operating cash flow. Another item is the capital spending, either investment into your expansion or investment into the infrastructure. Again, this usually the most common need for the financing of the business. And then basically the change in equity or change in debt, that's your financing option if there is a sufficiency or insufficiency of the cash. This is usually the ways of financing, either via equity or the debts. Few tips, and this is based on my personal experience and based on what I saw in the throughout my career. There are many ways actually that you can minimize your cash insufficiencies and probably in certain cases avoid looking for the financing. Now, being finance, it's always critical to to look at the cost structure. Always challenge your cost structure. Always look and question every single cost element in your structure. Especially in the times of the needs and the times of the cash insufficiencies, try to determine what is nice to have from the spending standpoint and what is must have. At certain point of time, you realize maybe the the big office is not needed, and you can survive with the smaller office. Maybe you will realize that the trucks which moving your goods going filled only in one direction, and on the way back they're going empty. How can you utilize that? At some point of time, you will realize that maybe you don't need as many people in your business. And then as we're going through the whole digital age, you will realize also that a lot of the processes which your company is, can be simplified, can be automated, can be moved to digital. At the end of the day, with the AI, with the robotics, and so on and so forth, there are plenty of opportunities to simplify, automate the processes, which can actually make your business processes simpler and more safe, more secure, and actually less prone to the human error. So underline is challenge your cost. Look at the every cost cost element across your spending buckets and challenge why do you need it. From the cash perspective, as I mentioned, in the end of the day, there are a couple of the items which you always can look at. One of the biggest one, in my experience, the inventory is one of the critical drivers of the cash. There is no impact from the P&L. In the end of the day, you put the money into the inventory, either the raw materials or the finished goods, and it's considered as your asset. However, if you're not able to move that inventory, that cash will be locked for a long time, and this is not something you want to have. You want to ensure that you only have the inventory which can be moved as quickly as possible. Do not let the inventory sits in the warehouse in the hopes and dreaming that you will be able to sell it at a certain point of time. So be brutal on the inventory. Make sure that you only keep the enough inventory to support the operations of the business. Collect faster, pay later. Again, I mean, probably simpler said than done, but this is something which you will need to understand. How do I incentivize my customers to pay me faster? And then sometimes paying the additional incentive to those customers, to pay faster will go a long way because you will have the cash available. And then pay later. See if there is any way you can delay or sort of delay the payments to your suppliers. Of course, still honoring the commitment, but how do you agree with your suppliers that they can receive the money later than you actually collect? And another one is all the advances. Now, again, advance payments is something you pay for the services which will be provided in the future. And this might be the annual subscriptions. It might be paying to your suppliers just to secure their services. But just remember, again, this is the hard cash locked for something which will only happen in the future. Can this be avoided? Can you actually pay when the service is provided? But try to see if there is any way to minimize those advanced payments. And from the capital standpoint, again, that might be the biggest probably cash outlay in certain businesses. Make sure that you understand fully why do you need that investment, and only invest in what matters and what will generate the return in the future. If there is no need to pay a full investment at one go and you can pace it based on the certain trigger points, try to pace it, because that always means that you will delay the cash outlay. So yes, focus on the cost, cash, and capital as you look at your cash flow, and then you will realize that in a lot of the cases, your short-term cash insufficiencies can be impacted. I will pause here and then see, Mikhail, if there are any questions so far on the from the cash and why cash and what to do with cash.
So, Stan, there's one question, and I think anyone else, if you have questions, you can send it through. So the one question that we have is, one of the biggest problems women-owned businesses have is getting contracts from corporates who pay in 60 to 120 days yet dealing with suppliers who want upfront payments. How do we deal with that?
So basically, you can see that the corporates are trying to exactly do what I mentioned before. So they're trying to delay the payments and collect faster. It's in the end of the day, it's about the negotiation power. So are your services so unique to those corporations that they cannot find um, uh, uh, those services elsewhere? Then you will have a negotiation power to probably challenge those ones. Very often on the flip side, when the corporates offer the longer terms of paying their suppliers, they usually also offer the access to the cheaper capital. In the case of P&G, for example, the P&G is paying quite long, but P&G is offering access to the to certain tools, which suppliers can utilize to still finance on the much better terms than they would otherwise. So that's where probably with the as you're dealing with the corporates, try to see if you can tap on those corporations credit ratings and get the access to the cheaper capital.
Great. And we have a second question, which is a bit broader, but it's how much of cash should you have in your business bank account to carry into the next month?
Again, I cannot disclose the exact numbers, but the way how we operate, we're actually looking at the bogey cash. What is the and the bogey cash means that how much do I need at any point of time to honor my commitments to to the cash outflow? And this is sort of at any point of time, what is my monthly cash outlay on people cost? How much do I need to pay to people? How much do I need to pay to suppliers? And how much do I need to pay for the goods? That determines my absolute minimum cash cash limits, and that's what we always aim to have in our bank account. Now, again, with the with P&G probably and a lot of the corporations, you will realize that the global corporations are having a bit of the leverage with the access of the to the cash across the different legal entities or across the internal cash pools and so on and so forth. So maybe the challenges are not as extensive as, for example, for standalone for small enterprises. But you always need to be mindful that for you to even seeing externally, even if you seek the financing, all the investors will look at the liquidity of your business, and the liquidity of your business is exactly what it is. Is the cash sufficiency to cover your short-term liabilities or short-term payments.
Great, and we have one more before we can move on, and that goes back to your answer of the first one, to just expand a bit more on the cheaper capital, because often corporates don't want to share that, and also how to access that corporate credit rating to get access to that cheaper capital.
Yeah, so basically, and again, on what P&G offers to the suppliers is the access to the financing, basically linked to the P&G credit rating, which means, and again, this is the global agreement which P&G is trying to leverage with with our banking partners on how do we support our suppliers and get them basically the loans or the financing using the P&G credit rating, which will be usually much more favorable than the smaller enterprises or some of the local companies can get access to. Now, again, I'm not saying it can be it can be a solution for every corporate. I don't know what if corporate has that sort of access, but usually try to talk to the corporates on what they can offer to help you with the cash access. Every corporate can have a different relationship with their banking partners, and some of the relationship can allow, for example, access to the letter of credit on the favorable terms, or any other arrangements, where they can assist. In any case, always check on, what is the rationale for, for the payment terms they're offering, and maybe, try to see if, any of the incentives or any of the discounts which you can offer to those corporates can actually reduce those payment terms.
Great, thanks, Dan. That's all the questions that we had now. And if there's any more questions that you guys on the call have, please send them through in the chat, and we'll touch on them again soon.
Thank you. Okay, now, of course, once you look through it, there will be circumstances where the financing is needed. So then you need to do a bit of the pre-thinking and pre-work before you go and try to seek the financing. Need to be clear. What is the amount needed? Do I need all the amount now, or I can pace my investment and agree on the certain sort of installments of the investment that will help you to also reduce the cost of the investment if you pace it out. Now, do you need short-term or long-term? Do you need just to the quick financing to fund the short-term insufficiency, where you need to just wait until you collect the revenue, or you need the long-term investment where you want to build a warehouse, or you want to invest in the infrastructure, you need the new plant operations? Do you actually want to do debt type of the financing on the equity? Do you want to bring the new partners? There will be tricks in any of this. Debt is usually only cost you money. Equity will cost you certain level of controls and ownership of your business, and affordability. And again, linked to the previous point, whether it's debt, how much you can afford to pay for that debt. You will need to realize that usually short-term debt is can be cheaper than the long-term debt. And if you go into the equity, how much control are you willing to give away? So you need to be very clear before you start engaging with any potential investors on what will be your walkaway points. What are the options? We will just briefly touch again. We talked this 2 weeks ago, but we will briefly touch on the on what are the avenues for potential financing options. Again, especially for the small businesses, the first probably most affordable way to go is friends and family. Now, again, this usually will help with the relatively smaller investments. But just one thing you need to remember, whether you do it with the professional investors or you're doing it with the friends and families, make sure that you do it in the legal way. You have the agreement. You only ask for what's needed. You give your friends and family the details of your business and have the business plan, so at least they can make an educated choice whether invest or not to invest in the business, and make sure you honor the commitments. In the end of the day, you will need to pay the cost of those investments as you would do for any other investor. And then you go into traditional loans. This is basically, either bank, financial institution, any of the finance organization, or sometimes the non-profit organizations which can support certain areas of the business. Sometimes the government can have favorable loan options for the again, for certain development or for certain industries. So this is, again, this can be long-term, this can be short-term, but that's where you are going now into the formal loaning with the where you need to be prepared to put the collateral to ensure that there is a certainty and security of that investment for the banks or for the financial institutions. Factoring, again, I was talking briefly on the short term when you have, especially in the cases where you have longer payment terms to sort of, longer terms to receive the money and very short term to pay money, where you will have certain level of insufficiencies. Factoring is basically the instrument to bridge that. And that's where the financial institution of the investor or the bank will agree to pay you faster, bigger part of your receivable, and then the rest after the collection is made. So they're basically buying your receivable from you at the fee. Now, it's a common instrument, and it's actually a very effective in breaching those short-term insufficiencies. One thing you need to keep in mind, it can be very expensive, depending on the market, depending on the risk profile of your customers, in the sense on, what is the risk of collecting those receivables. The price can be quite high, but it can be a goodly way to bridge the short-term cash insufficiencies. Crowdfunding, I guess, many of you heard about it. It's an emerging instrument or emerging way to attract the investment. It can be both equity investment or it can be the debt-based. Now, relatively lower price if you make the potential investors to buy into your idea, and given that the risk is spread across many investors, the price is usually low, and the risk appetite for those investors sometimes is much higher. There are a few watch outs around the legal framework, given that it's an emerging one, given that it's very often linked to the social media. The regulation is not yet bulletproof. So there are opportunities for fraud on both sides. So just do your research, make sure that you know what you're doing. But this is something which helped a lot of the small entrepreneurs to attract the funding for the needed investments. So the previous three avenues were mainly around the debt investment. So now, what are the opportunities on the equity side? One of the most common one is the venture capital and the private equity. So these are basically the companies, so the firms which are interested into the buying the or investing into the business in exchange of ownership, part of the ownership. So they different venture capital firms, they will have interest in different industries potentially, but they, of course, they're interested in something which is new to the industry, with the which provide the potentially disruptive innovation in the industry, something which is promising on the good growth in the future. Now, for these firms, usually they will require to see that there is a potential in the business. They need to see that it's something new, something differentiated in the business. But also, what you will find that they will require certain level of controls. They will require to be part of the decision making in the company. They will require to, in certain cases, to change the strategies. So this is one of those investment choice where you need to be ready to give away parts of the controls over your business. Okay. Angel investing, very similar idea to the venture capitalists. but it's more on the individual side. Similar, so in the venture capital firms, they're the companies, the institutional investors. With the angel investors, it's usually the individuals who has that, who has the spare funding, and they want to be seen, and they want to own the parts of the promising businesses. Um, uh, and again, they will want to play very active role in the management of your business, as well as the overall equity ownership. Impact investing, and I think this will be the last potential avenues. The main difference of the impact investors versus the venture capitalists, they're not always driven by the financial return. There will always be certain social responsibility expectations. So these institutions or individuals are very passionate about the certain areas of the social responsibilities, either the environmental or the changing the social economics sort of trends in the industry or in the market. And for them, the biggest point for the investment will be that if your company um, can provide those perspective, or has those metrics as part of the strategy, and something they will invest if they see that your company is very passionate about this area, and this is something where the financial returns are not on the first place for those investors. Okay. I think that completes the avenues for the investors. So I will pause here for any questions on the previous two parts.
Great. So we have about 3 questions, Dan. The first one was, if you take family and friends loans, what interest rates should you ideally use?
I mean, if I look any of the return, investors will be looking at the return which is better, at least equal or better from the risk-free return. And when I said the risk-free return, it's usually either the if family, friend put the money into the government bonds, or in very safe bank sort of term deposit. So at least depending on the risk of your of your business, you need to be very, like as I mentioned, we will be talking as on what are the thinking or what are the points for the investors, but you need to provide is your future, either your future returns are risky, is your business potential, are you operating in the risky industry, is your business model risky, and if there is a risk involved, you will need to basically add this risk additional cost on top of those safe safe deposits. So you will need to do, if your friends would put it in the bank, how much would they earn? And then add potential, extra points for the risk of your business, from the time of the return and from the risk of your business.
Great. And the next one is, do you ever get a combination of angel investing and impact investing?
And sorry, which one?
Angel investing and impact investing.
I haven't. I mean, again, I haven't experienced any relationship with either of those. But just from the definition, I would assume that there will be combination. In the end of the day, if you look, the angel investment investors are usually the passionate investors which have certain objectives in mind. And then you will find some of them will be passionate about the sustainability and environmental issues. So you might have the combination of those.
Great. And when considering angel investing, what are the 3 aspects to look into when deciding to invest?
So the cost of it, in the end of the day, they would have certain return in mind. So, I mean, again, as we were talking, the affordability, what will be your walkaway point? One of the biggest one, for angel investment as well as the venture capitalist is the level of control you're prepared to give away. To me, this is probably, especially for the small enterprises, given that, in most of the cases, you will, most likely be full owner of your business. You need to be prepared to give away certain level of control. So what that level of control you are comfortable with of giving away, given that you will have somebody else potentially telling you what to do, what your strategy should be, and what is your what's your execution plan should be.
Great. And we have a lot of questions that actually came through, but I think we'll touch on one more and carry on and touch on the remaining at the end. The last one we'll touch on would be, what is the most important info to have handy in order to be investor ready?
Sorry, Mikhail, I didn't catch that. Can you repeat, please?
What is the most important information to have on hand to be investor ready?
We will actually cover this in the last section. So after this Q&A, so we will cover what preparation you need to do and also what are the points investors looking at. So if you can just hold that question until the last and see if it's not answered yet.
Great, thanks. We can proceed and we'll cover the remaining questions at the last Q&A section.
Sure. Okay, so just as the last question was, so what are the preparation you need to do before you start approaching the investors? Very clearly, so the investors will look at liquidity of your business. So in the end of the day, you need to be very clear on what is your cash conversion cycle. In other words, is basically, what is that cycle of converting your resources into the revenue. So liquidity is one of the things which investors will be looking very passionately about, because this is basically ability to repay them. You need to make sure that you know your business. You need to know how much your company worth. You need to know what's your growth perspectives. You need to know the risks which associated with your industry you're operating, with the country you operate in, and with your business model you chose to play. You need to see, with the growth perspective, you actually putting there what is the worth of your company in the future. What does it take from the timing and resources to start creating the value, especially if you looking for the investors to invest in the business which is still in the development mode and might not be profitable yet, but you need to be very clear on what will need to happen for business to start create value. And again, as we were talking, the risks, with the risks, what is the likelihood of you achieving success in the future? Again, as you will need to seek the, you will need to ensure that your business plan and your understanding of your business can hold the stress test. You basically, you need to have a business plan with the scenarios. We need to understand, once you decide what type of the investors you want to approach, what the investors are looking for, and you need to be prepared to answer certain questions investors might have. You need to be able to address any of the challenges of your business plans in terms of your understanding of the risks, of your understanding of the likelihood of the success. From the formal part of the process, you will need to have at least 3 years of the audited financials. In the end of the day, business plan is your vision of your business, where your last performance, official audited performance, is the fact, and the investors will need to marry this together. And again, as part of your business plan, what is your strategy? What is your vision of of the plan. One thing actually investors will look at your ability to deliver that vision and strategy, which means how strong lead team you would have. And again, I mean, involve the legal day, given that any of the relationship with the external parties, any of the financing, it's a legal transaction, so you will need to ensure that you've got your legal advice. And this is actually my last slide, and these are the the thoughts and the checks and the expectations which investors will have in mind as they interact with you. Amount of the capital invested. So again, different investors will have a different funds availability. With friends and family, it might be relatively smaller. With the corporate investors, it might be larger. But make sure you're very clear on the amount of investment needed and how is it linked to your needs or to your vision or to your business plan. The timing of the investment, do you need the the full amount now, or you can or the investment will be paced off in the sense that there will be certain triggers of triggering each new installment of the investment. Is it certain level of growth? Will it be certain events in the future will trigger the investment, or it's a one-off investment and you need the warehouse now, for example? The return on investment, now in debt, it will be in the loan or any other debt, it will be basically interest. And again, depending on the timing of the return or the risk of the return, the pricing can be different, the interest can be different. And then equity is basically expectations of the future earnings of the company. From the timing of the return standpoint, again, as I mentioned before, the timing change the risk of the investment. At the end of the day, the further in the future the return is expected, the more uncertainty is there. And investors usually, at the end of the day, the price of the investment will always be the risk, the premium for the risk. You've got your free risk, risk-free investment opportunities, as I said, the government papers or the bank deposit. And then depending on the likelihood and the risk of the industry, the risk of the company, the risk of the country, there will be risk premium, which those investors will want to receive if they want to invest in your business. The certainty of the return, again, as we talked, be very clear what are the risks carried with your business. It can be the country risk, it can be COVID risk, it can be industry specific risks. So any of those risks will add the price on the investment. And the control. At the end of the day, as we were saying, especially with the equity investment, one of the biggest price you will need to pay, apart from the sharing the future earnings, it's the control of your business. It's basically additional partner who will have a say on how to run the business, on how to determine the strategy, how to determine the execution. Okay. So yeah, that was the last part of the presentation. So I think now if we can just cover the final questions.
Great, thanks, Dan. And so I'll touch on the questions that were sent through last time as well that we didn't get a chance to touch on. Going back to the discussions on access to capital and using the corporate better credit rating, you mentioned that corporates have relationships with banking partners to assist suppliers, but this is often not shared with all suppliers. Can a supplier charge P&G or a corporate for the charges taken by the banking partner? Meaning, can they pass that on?
Sorry, Mikhail, the last part of the question I missed.
Basically, if a corporate's banking partner offers better finance to a supplier, can they then pass on those costs associated with that finance to the corporate?
It's part of the negotiation. I mean, in the end of the day, it's a negotiation process. And Mikhail, probably you can answer more as a procurement manager on your negotiation with the suppliers. But essentially, it's what leverages do you have with the corporations? If you're in the end of the day, if you are supplier of certain unique properties or goods or services which very hard to substitute elsewhere, you will have a leverage to then negotiate the conditions of the terms of your relationships. And if you have that leverage, you will probably have a likelihood of getting certain certain benefits behind it, either the more favorable payment terms, or extra discounts. If your services or goods are not unique and can be easily substituted with the other suppliers, then potentially those leverages will not work, and the corporation in this case will have a leverage.
Great. And the next one would be, I think I can just add a little bit of perspective on that, like you said, from the procurement side. And as you mentioned, it is negotiation specific, but from a overall blanket approach, procurement takes an approach of we don't pay for cash, meaning we wouldn't incur a increased fee for better payment terms. Again, that's the blanket approach, and it's negotiation specific.
Yeah, and maybe Mikhail, sorry if I can just, I think one other angle you need to look, especially when you're dealing with a corporation, it's certainty of the income stream. Usually when you deal with the multinationals or with the big corporations, usually you have a bigger certainty of the future future cash flow. And in certain cases, if some of the suppliers operate only on serving the big corporations, and this for them is the bread and butter of the business, and this is probably something they are prepared to pay for with the longer terms. So in the end of the day, you will need to determine on what is the important for your business. Is that particular relationship is important, and how much you're willing to pay. In the end of the day, if the payment terms with the corporation, with the bigger sort of company does not make financial sense for you, you will walk away.
Great, thanks, Dan. Next one would be, if your investors are in another country, which interest rates would you use, as they differ from country to country?
The investors from other country, if they invest in the country, they will basically, again, they will start with the expected rate of return, and then they will put the country risk on top of this. And every country has basically a certain risk premium, to operate with. With South Africa, for example, with the sovereign rating being now downgraded to junk, the expectations will be that South Africa will be the riskier investment choice for most of the overseas investors. So they will require higher premium. But usually, if you look at it, they are looking at the local interbanking interest rates in the country, which already has the country premiums, and then they will add the premiums for any of the additional risks of that investment.
Great. And the next one we go to is, will you associate impact investments with CSI budgets in corporates?
Impact investors with
CSI budgets.
I'm not sure. So what is the CSI budget?
I think if I can give an explanation on behalf of the person that asked it, that would be part of the things we do for enterprise development, supply development,
Okay.
Economic development, etc.
So is the question is, are the, corporation not considered to be impact investors as part of the the supply development, or I'm not sure I actually am clear on the question.
Okay, maybe we can get the person that asked it to just expand a bit and send a new or send another message in with an expansion of it, and we can go to the next one and come back to that.
Okay.
Next one would be just looking, how do you approach financiers, investors, or investors when financials are weak but can demonstrate potential for growth and turnaround, especially where capital is a needed injection?
Okay, so I think you need to just have a clear understanding for yourself on why the financials are weak and why the investment will help to turn this around. So that's where the business plan, the quality of the business plan is critical. So as one of my points was that you need to articulate very clearly on what does it take to turn around the performance and start creating the value. But I mean the weak financial statements is the fact, and that will be potentially one of the adverse potential adverse points in the discussions, unless you've got a very clear understanding and explanations on why the performance was weak, and you know exactly what to do to improve it.
Great. And the next one is, what are the different options of investing if you don't have the money or cash capital?
What are the different options of investing into somebody or attracting the investment?
So I would think attracting the investment.
No, hi, Mikhail. Hi, Stan. No, it would be you being an investor. So I've heard of options where if you've got time to invest or you've got the insights, you've got the know-how, the expertise, there's a way to invest in a lucrative business without necessarily injecting cash into the business. How would you format those type of investment opportunities?
So basically investing in non-cash items, yeah, either
Yeah.
the technology or other means, yeah. I think especially in the digital, I would assume in the digital and sort of age where a lot of the technological companies have certain processes of the automation, for example. They've got know-how, to your point. It's a matter of approaching the companies. If you believe that your know-how or your technology is a complete unique and disruptive, that is basically approaching the different firms or advertising the services. And I've been contacted on the LinkedIn almost weekly from different companies offering those types of the services.
Okay, so can I give you an example, Stan?
Sure.
So for instance, I had a gentleman who approached me and said, I can come into your organization and I've got 20 years experience, board experience, sitting on different boards. Can I have 10% shareholding in your organization? I won't put in money, but eventually when your organization grows, I will get dividends out, like those type of investments. So getting shareholding by putting in time and consulting and advisory services into that particular organization. Does that work like a loan, or would you structure that like a loan to get the shareholding? Or
no, this is basically sort of the I would say it is a different way of the venture or impact investors. Yeah, in the end of the day, instead of just the funding and the cash, they believe that with their knowledge and expertise, they can turn around to your company and start creating the value. And for that, basically, you're paying the, you give the share of the business to the person. Now, it can be done in the end of the day, but it's very risky because the only, well, I mean, not risky, but in the end of the day, the only risk which carried here is you are taking the risk, because financially you are taking the risk. The person basically doesn't carry any risk. If nothing happens out of this, the person will still have the share of the company. I would suggest that you would have the legal advice and see what is the way to legalize that relationship and to ensure that the risk is spread equally between the parties.
Helps. Thank you.
Great. Coming back to the previous question, we said we'll touch on Stan. We have a bit more clarity. It's corporates have corporate social investments in the BEE scorecard budgets, and as we talked, it could be the enterprise development, supply development, etc. Are the companies using and defining these as part of impact investments or not?
Impact, yes, it will be. I mean, at the end of the day, impact investors, just the generic name for anybody who wants to invest in certain changes, in the world. And in the end of the day, even, if you look at the sort of investment into the BE scorecard, usually the companies will not do the investment just for the scorecard. The investment will be done in line with the company's strategies and beliefs, and so in the end of the day, they will choose to invest into the company which is in line or similar in beliefs or into overall strategies of the company. So yes, I would say generically, and all those investments will be considered as impact investors.
Great, and we have one that's a bit further away from access to capital, but it's with regards to regulatory landscape and the impact of the regulatory landscape with new regulations coming in terms of the International Finance Reporting Standards, the POPI Act, etc. It's becoming, it's causing the cost of operations and license to operate and cost of compliance to increase quite a bit. What would be the P&G view of the regulatory landscape, and would that have any impact to business operations?
Well, at the end of the day, the regulations are regulations, and we need to. I mean, P&G is always living in the spirit of the law. So if the regulations are there, it will be there. Now, what we do, we leverage again especially in the finance area, we're leveraging the expertise of our banking partners. And usually, they will have already, the banks will have the infrastructure to cover most of the regulatory parts. So that potentially might reduce the overall cost if you have a quality banking relationships. But in the end of the day, it's the cost of doing business.
Great, and I think we can touch on one more before Jean has to close out, and that's with regards to the way corporates finance the flow of goods and services in the supply chain. It's been changing over the past 5 years, and what would the trend look like? That's looking more as well towards eco-friendly and people-friendly ways of supply chain management against financial incentives.
Sorry, Mikhail, I was a bit of the disturbance online. Can you repeat?
Sorry, the last question looks at, has there been a change in the way corporates finance the flow of goods and services in their supply chain over the past 5 years? Specifically looking at, has there been a shift to more eco-friendly and people-friendly ways of supply chain management against more financial incentives?
Overall, yes. I mean, very, very short answer, yes, and especially for the companies, who are there for the, for long term, the mentality is changing. The companies are, becoming a very cautious about the social responsibilities. So, and that impacts the all the supply chain design and the expectations from the suppliers and the expectations from the customers. So yes, the world is changing for sure.
Great. Thanks, Dan. This was a really insightful session. I'm sure it was for the ladies on the call. There was a lot of engagement, a lot of questions being asked. This was really great, and the third time having you on. I'll hand over to Jean now to do the final closeout.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Mikhail. Did we cover all the questions? I think we did. A few questions came in late, but I think you managed to compress some of them, right?
Yes, we did, Jean.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thanks, Stan. That was very, very informative. The one thing I wanted to repeat that you mentioned, I wanted to repeat for the women business owners, was around negotiating contract terms upfront, especially when it comes to payment. I hear that all the time with the corporates we work with, that it's too late to try and negotiate afterwards. You do it during the negotiation times. So a lot of corporates will pay 60 to maybe 120 days, as one of the questions says, but negotiate upfront to make sure that you can get earlier payments, and often they are available. So with that, Stan, would like to thank you for your time, and for Mikhail also. It's been really great. My name is Jean Chawapiwa. I'm the country director for We Connect International in South Africa. We're going to be sending out a feedback form for this session to all those who attended. Please, please, please take the time to fill it in. We really appreciate your feedback, especially if you give us ideas on some of the other topics you'd like us to cover going forward as well. And with that, if there's anybody on the line who's not a member of We Connect International, please go onto our website and register your business. As long as the business is minimum 51% owned, managed, and controlled by women, we'd love you to register. Doesn't matter which country you're in, you go into the database, weconnectinternational.org, and put in your country details and your business details, and we'd love to keep in touch with you. Thank you, Stan and PNG, for this series of webinars. We're really learning a lot and appreciate your time. Thank you for all the attendees and for all the questions, and have a great day, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jean.